No
None.
footsteps
No
coming into the
fingerprints
house.
in the house. Not a thread, a fiber, a hair. Not a biological specimen of sweat, saliva, semen, or blood. This person who had the incredible ability, agility, adroitness, and cleverness to come into the house, leaving no point of breaking and entering, no point of exiting, who knew where to go to the bedroom, could take her from the second floor to the basement without causing any disturbance, could engage in this game.
It's an interesting turn of phrase, engage in a game. Who do you think he's referring to there?
This is the same person who forgets then to take the body.
So can you see what he's doing? He's trying to express, he's trying to contrast the brilliance of this criminal in his ability to leave no trace of himself, and then he leaves this absolutely vulgar, explicit trace of himself in terms of this ransom note, unnecessarily long. Much ado about nothing, and it turns out to be bogus because JonBenet's in the house to begin with. Was that also a clumsy mistake from this clever perpetrator? Now, if you think about it, in a real sense, the only clue we have of the intruder is the note. So obvious, so unsubtle, and of course Patsy can't be conclusively identified as the note's author, but she can't be excluded as its writer either.
So easy. So simple.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Why haven't Boulder PD been able to make a case against the Ramseys?
Boulder police feel that they have made a case sufficient to proceed, and they've been knocking on the door of the DA for more than 1 year.
Correct.
It is the DA, Alex Hunter, who has dragged his feet.
Okay.
And now you get into some interesting questions. Why?
Okay. Now, recently, a lot of experts were brought in to
2.5 weeks ago, Monday and Tuesday in
And I
Boulder.
think Barry Scheck was there, Dr.
Yes,
Lee. They're
right.
both colleagues of yours.
Yes.
They were brought in to help the DA decide whether there was enough evidence to seat a grand jury.
Yes.
I mean, does he need
Well,
to convene a group of experts to make that
No,
decision?
of course there's...
And the interview is absolutely right to laugh at this idea. While I think we need to get some experts in to decide whether we have enough evidence. And think about the irony of what Alex Hunter said at the end of the day. You know, we do not have sufficient evidence. Wow, okay. That in itself is an incredibly hard to believe statement to make, especially regarding this case.
If that gives him the window dressing that he feels he needs, fine.
Did you catch that? Because this is an amazing, perhaps even scornful statement by Dr. Wecht. It suggests, certainly in his opinion, what Hunter was doing was a kind of legal pageantry, a sort of legal PR exercise.
Well, you're not wrong.
And then the good Dr. Wecht makes this prediction.
As I sit here with you today, that before the end of this month, Alex Hunter will announce that he is turning the case over to the grand jury.
And of course, that is pretty much exactly what did happen. Now, what's interesting isn't that Hunter turned the case over to the grand jury, but his reluctance to do so, how long it took him to do what seemed to be obvious to everyone else, what he needed to do.
Do you see any similarity between this case and the OJ case? Money buying justice, maybe?
There are some similarities.
You were very involved in
To
the OJ
begin
case.
with, the bungling at the scene. And the delay in bringing in appropriate experts and the failure to recognize and collect evidence in proper fashion. So you've got a big similarity there. And then the question of affluence and so on, and the reticence of the police to make a move with people who are prestigious, affluent, prominent in the community. Oh, indeed, there are some striking similarities.
And I don't think it's an accident that Patsy Ramsey mentioned the OJ case during her very first interview. It almost was like a warning. Do you really want to go down this legal route with us? And what do you think the answer is? Did anyone really want to, given where we are now? I still think, as I think Steve Thomas does, it wasn't the cops who bungled this case, it was the DA. Wecht predicts indictments for the Ramseys.
Well, I think it'll go to the grand jury. Then you
And
won't
then by
hear
the end of the
anything.
year?
There may be a leak or two, and then they'll take their time. They move slowly in Boulder. By the end of the year, you're going to get indictments.
Well, it took even longer than that. It took another 10 months longer than Wecht predicted, but he was right. In a fashion, there were indictments that were just not ultimately signed. Wecht felt that John was a logical suspect, and this, of course, isn't in the interview. It is from Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. Now, I must admit, I also suspected John for about the first 5 minutes, and John was the first person I suspected when I first dealt with the Ramsey case, maybe for the first week when I first researched this case. If there was a SA aspect to the case and no evidence of an intruder, well, who did that leave? And so in this sense, John starts off as an obvious suspect when you don't really know that much about this case. I don't know what Wecht believed after having written the book. As I say, I haven't read it, but I'd say he has a problem if John was still his prime suspect 18 months later. I do think it's interesting that Wecht believes in prior SA, but him being right on that score might be due to his opinion on John, which to me undermines his opinion on prior SA. Now, the housekeeper seemed to think that the injury to JonBenet was inflicted with a flashlight as punishment for bedwetting. Well, as dumb as that idea sounds, well, she seemed to get it from somewhere else. Wecht seems to imagine not only SA at the time, but as I say, prior SA as well. And then the last thing I want to bring up, the ligature around the right wrist.
They wanted my interpretation. These pictures showed the little girl with the rope around her neck and around the right wrist. And
now, on the one hand, I really appreciate Wecht's attention to detail. On the other hand, I don't appreciate him calling this thing about a rope, that's the word he uses, rope, around JonBenet's right wrist. The significance of this is that it goes to the scale of the crime. I mean, how loosely was it tied, for example? Why was there a heart drawn on her left hand? Because there's a mismatch between how loosely the ligature is around her hands compared to her neck. But the thing I really don't like is Wecht referring to the ligature as a rope. And I mean, details matter. It wasn't a rope, it was a nylon cord, barely more than a loop of white string. But what's interesting is that he was also supplied with leaked documents as well as photos of the inside of the Ramsey house. And so do you see what we're dealing with? A coroner, a pathologist, a doctor who performs autopsies who is saying, I see these injuries, but I need additional context. Let's see the girl's bedroom. Let's find out who these people are and how they lived. Let's look at all the evidence. Let's look at this ransom note. Now, I'm not going to take it further than that. I think Wecht's insights as a lawyer are better in this case than his insights as a doctor. I think a better person to consult when it comes to the SA narrative is the coroner, the man who performed the autopsy. I think it was the morning of December 27th. He's almost the only person to have seen firsthand what was done to JonBenet, I mean doctor, that saw this. And that person was John Mayer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.